Hello. I quite liked Jason's suggestion that we actually start drinking games through this because I've got more buzzwords in here than you've heard in a long time. So if we start off with quick introductions, Ed Thewlis from the DataShed. We are a team of geeks. We basically specialise in everything. We've got .NET guys, we've got open source guys, but we provide consultancy to primarily private sector companies. We also are in the process of building our vastly scalable open source software as a service for managing consumer data. All very exciting, but it doesn't pay the rent. Today, I am talking about Viva the Revolution, as in two revolutions, both very exciting, but both happen at the same time, which makes life very, very difficult. I'm going to talk about the idea that open source and proprietary software can work together, or they can live separately, but the difficult thing is actually working out what the hell to do when you have the choice. And I'm going to take you through three stories from the coalface, things that we've come across recently, problems we've had, and the ideas we've gone through to come to a conclusion. So the first one is the revolution. I said these are the first buzzwords, and there's quite a few on there. The summary of this is to say that for every new piece of software development, you could do it in 100 different ways, just using languages. 100 different ways using platform, hybrid cloud, or on-premise, or completely cross-data center. Loads of different ways of doing it. You could build it as a monolith application if you were that way inclined, or you could go a crazy microservice approach. You could find yourself utilising platform as a service for a little bit, infrastructure as a service a little bit, and have something on-premise. There are so many different ways of doing it, and I'll be honest with you, I spend all day every day trying to work out what to do, and I still don't know how to do it. There are so many different options, it's nigh impossible. At the same time, there's a data revolution taking place. Data has grown at such a rate over the last 5 years, and last year, it's almost impossible to deal with in the same way as we used to. You know, gone are the days where you could quite happily just sit there and poll your AS400 and get all the data out and then plough it into your data warehouse and run reports on a weekly basis. Dead and gone. So now we're in a position where we've got data flying at us, the requirements have changed, people want data sooner, want it different structures, and the tools to do so have completely changed as well. So if you actually sit down to work out how to build a new application, you can spend all day doing it. I'll be frank with you, Lewis and I, our principal architect, spent the best part of 3 hours of the day trying to work out our auto-scale strategy. And we came to the conclusion, we had no idea. Let's just do something. What I'm going to do is talk you through three cases, real-life cases where we've sat down, we've gone with working clients or our own stuff, and we've come to a conclusion about one area of this. My view is that when building an analytical system, like I said, inertia is generated by too much choice, therefore you've got to fix one of three things. Either you say, specifically, I'm going to choose a technology, on the premise that it is good enough, rather than going down and try and work out exactly what's the best one to use. Platform, you decide on one, on-premise, cloud, hybrid, whatever, but make that choice. Or people, if you've got good guys that can do certain things in certain languages, use them, but fix one of these three things. That will at least enable you to move on to build something of value. So, the first engagement I want to talk to you about is where we fix technology. We started off at the very start saying, well, what is going to constrain us in this engagement? The first thing we said, well, use Microsoft on-premise. There's a lot of text here, and I'll share the slides afterwards if you like. But basically, the summary is, we're building a data mining platform in Microsoft SQL Server. And Mr. Lodge behind the scenes there will recognise this one very well. Up front, we said, right, the guys in the environment we're building it it's this Microsoft house. They know SQL Server, so the skills exist already to pick this up. So we're going to say specifically Microsoft SQL Server, job done. So that's great. So we know where to start. And with that type of technology, you know you can build something quite easily. It's plug and play to a certain extent, and there are very few ways to go wrong within there. So that was great. You know, in terms of fixing technology, we knew where we were going. We knew how to build something. We knew there was so much support out there to actually, when things went wrong, it was a very sort of low-risk strategy. However, there are sort of negatives to that in that Microsoft BI, cracking in some respects, but the functionality available at the top end, the client tools, it's starting to emerge, but it's still quite limited. So we knew up front that what we were doing is limiting ourselves in that respect, but we knew we could deliver a solution with a known path relatively easily. It's also very difficult to extend the base templates. If you want to actually take it, the SQL Server analysis service, you want to actually do something more than comes out of the box, you spend a lot of time on that. So when you embark on that type of journey, you've got to make sure that you understand that the real constraint you're applying. You know you can get something up and running quickly, and you know that the technology is robust enough to scale, but you are constraining yourself in what you can actually do in the long term. So we are a technology house. Engagement 2, platform. This one was quite interesting in that we said up front, we must use Amazon Web Services for everything. So that was the only remit we were given by the client. So basically, we had an existing relationship with AWS, and we must use everything on that, which sounds wonderful. So we knew from that perspective, we knew it was a cloud-based solution. Great, job done, decision made. From that point onwards, we need to try and work out, well, what technology, what language, what scale, how we're going to design it. All these questions come around by having so much freedom. And this is one of the most difficult ones we've had so far, in that you can choose on this provider infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service for anything. And there's different ways of cutting it. And we spend more time and effort invested in evaluating things than actually doing things. So this is a really good example of where, with all the choice in the world, to make it a good thing, it makes it very, very difficult and actually more expensive to proceed on an engagement. So the pros of this type of environment are that, yeah, you've got so many different options. You can stand up, they've got the DynamoDB, for example, or all the various different databases as a service. Gone are your DBAs. You can make sure that these things are maintained for you in the cloud. It's fantastic, but it comes with constraints. With your DBAs, you can extend it as far as you want. You can build your own specific clustering process or your own backup strategies specific to your environment. You can't do that as well or as easily with this type of environment. It's also quite difficult to extend. If you really want to take the platform as a service things that exist on AWS, you've got no hope. You get what you're given. So, when you are constraining yourself by your platform, the key consideration there is we're going to put it. One of the biggest things going away, the maintenance side of things, is a problem you don't have to really worry about in the future. However, you have got quite significant negatives to that. So again, it's just one thing to bear in mind. If you start off an engagement, say, let's go for the cloud, or let's go for on-premise, you're constraining yourself. Just understand the choice you're making. The next one is, as I talked about earlier on, this is Lewis and I and a couple of other guys trying to work out how on earth to build our own application. My background is sort of SQL Server, Microsoft, .NET. Lewis is a Java guy. Tony does DAX and R and various bits. We've got Python guys. We've got some really clever people, and most organisations do. We were chatting to Joe. They're on about, in fact, no, who was I talking about? About Jason. They're on about, you've got all these legacy systems that you've got guys that can do Delphi programming, you've got C, you've got C++, and all these bits and pieces. How do you maximise the use of that? Do you try and cross-train them? Do you try and get rid of those skills and say, let's adopt homogeneous technology? Or do you simply sort of embrace that and say, let's actually focus on the people and let's use the skills that they have? Let's build up, in our view, a microservice architecture. So we said we're constrained by the people. We're going to keep the people we've got and the skills that they have, but that's going to constrain what we're going to deliver. And what we're going to do is deliver a very well encapsulated, tiny service-led app platform. Sounds great. It sounds very cool and groovy. But the major problem with that is that, obviously, we've got 12 different languages in our code base now. Maintaining that is a nightmare. Continuous integration is a very, very difficult thing to do. So all these constraints we've applied to ourselves, we can focus on our people and make sure we utilise their skills to the utmost. But the problem we've got with that is that all these associated changes, so CI is very difficult, integration testing just is nigh impossible unless you automate the crap out of it. And you've also got to make sure that when you lose these people, you replace them very well. You have to make sure that you keep these people. So you find yourself having to really, rather than having disposable devs, .NET, I'll get one in 35 to 45 grand a year, I'll have 2 of those, please. It's not the same anymore. You've got these people who you must keep. So by us constraining ourselves to our people, we created a great dev environment, we created a great tool, but we found ourselves in a position where, it's very difficult to maintain. So, constrained by technology, by platform, or people. All sound quite bad at this point, don't they? These were absolute examples where there's very positive side of things, there's very negative side of things. The point I'm trying to make here is that without making these choices actively at the very start, we would have been up a creek without a paddle and doing nothing for a period of time. The important thing is, on any new engagement, or any new dev process, or any new business strategy, you've taken active choice to say, are we going to go with platform, technology, or people? And make a choice and understand the constraint you're applying to yourself at that stage. If you don't, you'll find yourself in a position, like many clients we go and see, where they've got a technology base which is stuck somewhere in the past because they don't have the right people coming through, or they find themselves constrained in a data center that really isn't fit for purpose anymore. You've got to, speaking to converted to a certain extent, you know, it's obvious stuff, but the important thing is it's obvious, but make the active choice. So, they're my ramblings from the coalface. Any questions?